everyone, it's Hannah and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to today's video. In today's video we are going to be doing a library reading vlog, and if you're like me, I go to my local library quite often actually, and I like to pick up a variety of different types of mediums of reading. So what I mean by that is typically I will get some physical copies, I will do an audiobook or a ebook through the Libby app with my local library affiliation, and I try to read as many as I can in a week. In today's reading vlog though, we are going to be only reading 3 books, and the first book that we are going to be reading will be on my Kindle, which is called The Chateau. The Chateau is a slow build mystery that is focused on these 4 women as they reconnect in their 40s. They are going to the chateau in France together to spend like a little girls trip weekend with one another, and of course while they're there some nefarious things begin to happen. They are stalked by an unknown number, and one of the individuals, dare I say, gets murdered. So I'm really excited to read this. I have not read anything by this author before. I do know that she has a recent release that just came out this summer or is about to come out this summer. And yeah, every time I go to the library, the cover really intrigues me because it has this really spooky like looking chateau with these like red blocky like letters. So I picked up this one based on the overall description, and also the cover like really pulled me in. The second book that we're going to be reading in today's reading vlog is actually an audiobook, and this audiobook is by none other than Richard Osman, and it's called We Solve Murders. So this is the first in a series, and it's basically following a daughter and father-in-law duo as they kind of solve murders. I'm gonna go into this a little bit blind just because I don't want to like spoil too much of the story for me, and I've read one other of Richard Osman's books before. I actually listened to the Thursday Murder Club earlier on in this year and I liked it, but I don't know if I loved it. I think I ended up giving it 3 stars, so we'll see. I am intrigued to do more of like Richard Osman's works. I know that Richard Osman does a really good job with like these quirkier type of cozy mysteries. He does a really good balance of writing books that have like tension in them but then also have these like humor elements to kind of like add a little bit of like ease to the overall plot. So I'm really excited to be listening to We Solve Murders. And then the last book that we are going to be reading is Strike Me Down by Mindy Mejia, and this is the physical copy. So yes, we're basically doing a Kindle audiobook and physical copy in today's reading vlog. Strike Me Down is a mystery. I don't believe it's a mystery thriller, but it's a mystery that has a little bit of a crime aspect to it because we are following a forensic accountant as she is searching for $20 million that has seemingly gone missing from a kickboxing event prize fund. And the setup alone really pulled me in. Also, this cover is like really interesting with the broken glass all over in it. So I picked this up based on the description. I have not heard anyone speak about this book. I don't know if the reviews are good or not. I'm gonna go into this blind as well so I can formulate my own thoughts and opinions. Yeah, without further ado, we are gonna get into today's reading vlog, and I think I'm going to start with The Chateau. So let's get reading. Hello, it's Hannah from the future with a little bit of a reading update. I've been reading The Chateau, and so far I'm about 50% of the way through this book. It is a very slow burn mystery. We are getting multiple different perspectives of these different women that are on this girls trip together in France. They're visiting one of the ladies' grandmothers, like owns this fancy chateau. So of course the grandmother invites all of her friends from back in the day when they all studied abroad together in France to come and stay at the chateau together. We are getting all the different perspectives of the 4 women in the friend group. And yeah, there's not a whole lot going on in terms of the plot. There was a very recent death that occurred to one of the characters, and there's also a little bit of mystery around this like stalker-ish type character that is coming for the different women in this friend group, but we're not getting a lot of clarity into who this person is or any hints or anything as to like why they're doing this. Also not a lot of details in terms of what is going on emotionally with these characters. There's some inner conflict that's like occurring between the friends in the friend group, but it's a lot more explained through telling as opposed to showing through the writing style, which is not my favorite form of writing. A lot of the sentences are very blunt and to the point where it's like, this character did this, and then this character did this. I feel this way. And when it's that sort of like telling language, it really doesn't give a whole lot insight or creativity into imagining kind of like what's happening. It's a little bit dissociating from the overall story. So that's my main critique with this so far, is the fact that we have this like subplot of this like stalker person that's not like explained super well, or we don't really get a lot of like motivations behind like why they're doing this, how it correlates to some of the other primary plot points, which would be the one character passing away. And there's not a lot of like clarity into like the motivations as to like why the certain character is like no longer alive. I don't know, we're 50% of the way through. Maybe there will be a couple of good plot twists or something like that along the way, but for right now I'm just kind of bored, to be honest with you. Maybe my opinion will change once we get through the last couple of chapters. I'm on chapter 23 out of, let me check how many chapters there are total. 45. So yeah, basically about halfway through the book at this point in time. I have been also listening to the audiobook for We Solve Murders by Richard Osman, and I'm also about 50% of the way through that. My overall thoughts and opinions on We Solve Murders is that I absolutely love the narration. I think the various different narrators in the audiobook have done a fantastic job with describing the story and also utilizing different character voices. I am also really enjoying Richard Osman's writing. He does a really good job with dialogue and like witty banter and making these really quirky characters that adds a little bit of humor to some more intensive scenes and moments. So as opposed to these two books right now, these are the only two that I've essentially like started at this point in time. I would say that I'm enjoying We Solve Murders a little bit more than The Chateau. And with that being said, I might end up doing like a crafty night or like a puzzle night and just listen to the audiobook and end up finishing it, because I would rather listen to that at this point than read The Chateau. But we'll just have to see like how I'm feeling like as the day unwinds. I need to meal prep and do some dinner, so I'm gonna go do a few chores and I will report back to you once I've done some more reading. Hey friends, I actually just finished The Chateau. What I can say about The Chateau after just finishing it is that I was kind of bored throughout most of this book. I will say that around like the 70% mark, things do begin to pick up quite a bit, and the ending and the plot twist really solidified the whole story for me. This was not one of my favorite mysteries that I've read this year. It is very much a story that feels a lot like Real Housewives and women's fiction with like just a dash of mystery thrown into it. I had a good time with it, but what is it my favorite? Absolutely not. I think the writing was also very more on the telling side as opposed to the showing side. And what I mean by that is a lot of the sentence structure was like, this character did this, and then this character did this. There wasn't a lot of like dialogue to like flush out some of the more like, I don't know, mysterious like plot points. There's also one of the characters ends up passing away in the book due to, well, they're basically murdered essentially, and I would have appreciated a little bit more of that pulled in at the beginning. I think the setup for that would have pulled in more intrigue if, you know, some of those bigger plot points happened in the beginning. I think that point when that character ends up being murdered is around like the 30-40% mark. So there's just a lot of like build up to that point, which was a lot of scenes that were much more like focused on these women's friendships and their character dynamics with one another. There's a lot of stuff from their past that's like brought to light, and it was also really interesting because a lot of these characters have met previously through like study abroad, or they like grew up together, and I think it would have been a little bit more suspenseful if we got more of their like inner dialogue of how they may not get along with one another so much at the beginning stage. At the beginning stage, they're much more like invested and interested in like spending time with one another, but obviously like as the story progresses and we have that big plot point of one of the main characters like ends up passing away, that ends up kind of escalating their dislike for one another, at least like spoken out loud. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I can say about this book, is that it was good. Was it my favorite? No. And I think for that reason, I'm gonna land on 3 stars for this book. It was really fun to read on my Kindle. I don't know who narrates the audiobook, but if you're looking for a slow burn mystery that feels very similar to like a Real Housewives situation, then I would definitely recommend picking up The Chateau. And with that being said, I'm going to continue listening to the audiobook for We Solve Murders by Richard Osman. And I would say that I'm probably around like 70% of the way through this book. I will continue to listen to it as I do chores throughout this weekend. And I will let you guys know my thoughts once I finish. And then the other book that we have is the physical copy. And I will pick that up probably later on in this week. I just finished We Solve Murders by Richard Osman, and I wanted to share my final thoughts and feelings with you guys. So I really enjoyed the audiobook version of this. It's got multiple narrators and they all did a great job with all the different accents and the voices. I listened to this while I did chores and then also did a puzzle, which was super cozy, and it had me really wanting to dive into some more mystery type books. I really enjoyed the audiobook narration for this and would highly recommend, if you end up picking up this book, to consider the audiobook as opposed to the physical copy. I really do believe that there are certain types of books that just hold up better to an audiobook version than a physical copy, and I think Richard Osman's writing is in such a way that really gives it more personality in terms of the narration as opposed to the physical copy. And what I mean by that is the way that he writes his dialogue is very engaging, because typically when you have multiple characters speaking with one another in his books, he will tag he says, she says, so it's very easy to follow back and forth the ping pong of the conversation. I think it also just shows how gifted and talented Richard Osman is. He does have more of a like TV adaptation background. I believe that he's been on multiple different types of like game shows and like game show writing, and you can really see that come through in his narration style, which most of the story is told through dialogue, and I absolutely love that in his writing, because we are figuring out the mystery the same time that the characters are. And I think that gives it a really engaging type of writing style. I will also say I really enjoyed the character dynamics in this story. We're following primarily Amy, who is a bodyguard. She essentially is a bodyguard to the rich and the famous types of characters. She ends up having to go to South Carolina and become a bodyguard for this mystery author who is now retired. I believe her name is Rosie. So she's a bodyguard for Rosie. The two kind of have this like a quirky dynamic. Rosie is very loud and outspoken, very sassy, and Amy is a little bit more reserved and by the book. She does not back down in the face of danger. She's a very strong female lead character. One day while she is guarding Rosie, however, these mysterious men begin to come after her and try to basically put a hit on her. There's a lot of different rabbit holes for side plots in this story, which made it very interesting. There is a little bit of a money laundering theme that's posed throughout this book, as well as elements of fraud and terrorist organizations, which is super interesting. I would definitely recommend this if you enjoy cozy mystery. I know that there's quite a bit of heavy topics that are in this, considering the money laundering and then also the aspect of Amy being a bodyguard and protecting these people while she's simultaneously being hunted after. However, a lot of that like tension is alleviated with the other main character, which is Steve. Steve is Amy's father-in-law, and the two of them have a really close bond and respect for one another. Steve used to be a cop investigator, and now he's just living the high life as a retired man. He has gone through some really tragic moments in his life recently. He lost his wife who he absolutely adores and thinks of her quite often. He is a man of routine. He will go to his favorite spot at the park and like have conversations with her and pretend that she is there because he misses her so dearly. And those moments really pulled me out of the tension, and I don't know, gave it a little bit more of like a cozy emotional aspect with Steve's character. He just doesn't like change, and for that reason I think that paints him in a really lovely and endearing light, because he has to come to the beck and call of Amy to be there for her and protect her and help solve the case as to who is out to get her. So the two of them end up having to like work together. It pulls Steve out of his comfort zone, which he's just a man solving small community crimes, like whose dog or cat goes missing. He'll like be contracted on the case to kind of figure out where people's pets have gone. He is just, you know, content with going to the pub and doing his trivia nights, which they call quizzes. And he just wants to live his simple retired life out of the limelight, out of danger. He wants predictability. Amy is the complete opposite of that, because a lot of her circumstances in the book are very unpredictable and high stakes and dangerous. So I felt like that character dynamic between the two, the father and daughter-in-law relationship, was very unique and different type of perspective. This is a series, so I think I will be continuing the series of this. It was, I think, a little bit more entertaining and intriguing than the Thursday Murder Club, which is another one of his beloved series that's focused more on a group of friends at a retirement community that band together to solve local murder mysteries, which is really cozy as well. If you enjoy more banter and humor in your mysteries, then I would highly suggest the Thursday Murder Club over We Solve Murders. We Solve Murders does have those cozy elements, like I was saying, with the introduction of Steve as the character, but there's also quite a bit of tension that is drawn out for the majority of the book. So it was a really good contrast and give and take. And the narration was fantastic. And so for that reason, I ended up giving it 4 stars, and I can't wait to continue on with that series at a later point in time. That brings us to the last book in today's library reading vlog, which is Strike Me Down by Mindy Mejia. And I've already started this. I'm not that much through it. I'm on literally like chapter 2 of this book. But what I can say so far of the initial premise, we are primarily following Nora. Nora is a forensic accountant. She uncovers fraud, and she ends up getting contracted to work with this company called Strike. And Strike is a kickboxing organization, I believe. So I am intrigued. I think this is going to have some elements of sports writing in it, and also some fraud as well as accounting concepts, which I work in corporate America. I'm very familiar with kind of accounting principles and the fraud triangle. So I'm intrigued to see how I'm going to like this, because I feel like it could be a little bit applicable or relatable to what I hear and see in my day-to-day job. The writing is very fast-paced, and also the text, you guys, is huge. I don't know if you can see this. I just opened to a random page, but the text is like very generous. So it probably will not take me too long to get through this. I will continue reading through this and give you guys an update once I get through about the 50% mark. So I am back with another reading update, and as you can see, yeah, I am more than like halfway through Strike Me Down by Mindy Mejia. I am loving this, and you'll just have to excuse me if my voice is a little bit quieter than normal. My husband is still asleep, but I am loving the plot of this so far. It's so good because it's incorporating elements that I'm familiar with in my day job. Basically, we're following our main heroine, and she is a accountant that undercovers fraud. So she's like a fraud analyst basically, and she gets contracted by this kickboxing company that is hosting this really big tournament, and the prize money is $20 million. However, all the prize money has like seemingly disappeared. Something has happened to it. So she and her team go into this company, and they are digging through like files of information to kind of like figure out like what's going on. Now that I'm about halfway through, I can give you more of like a general like consensus on my thoughts and feelings of this book. There is mixed media in here, so not only are we getting the normal like dialogue and writing, but there's also like emails that are incorporated in here, which is really cool to me. And there's also a little bit of like AI that's also in this book, which I think is really interesting considering I think this came out in like 2019 is when this was published. Oh, so this actually came out in 2020, like really early 2020. So yeah, at this point in time, I guess AI would technically be like a thing at that point. So I find that like really intriguing, and the amount of research and care that has gone into the overall like investigation process to uncover fraud at a company is done really well in the writing so far. Our main character, Nora, she is a little bit of a stickler for sticking to the rules, which is what you want like in an investigator, and I think that character personality really suits her. She does have a open marriage with her husband, so that does come into play a little bit as like a subplot into the story. I would say that's probably my primary like critique in this book is the romantic relationships. I don't feel like it's that necessary unless it comes out like later on in the book that's like more of a key like plot point, but as of right now it doesn't really feel like it's adding too much depth or like overall clarity to the main plot point, which is the missing money. I also really enjoyed the setting of this. This is taking place primarily in Minneapolis. I've actually never been there before, but the way that she is describing the town is really helping my understanding with like the placement of the different buildings, and there's a lot of like walking chats that our main character is doing as she's like going through her investigation process, and it was kind of hard for me to kind of like visualize that, but I guess Minneapolis has a lot of like covered bridges due to the amount of like snow and like poor weather that they have. So I think that's pretty cool too, is to just like give more of like an immersion into the setting. The kickboxing aspect of this story is super fascinating to me. I have not really read a mystery that has like a sports element to it, and this might be like a genre that I like gravitate towards more with like a sports type of trope. And yeah, she did a really good job with doing the various types of research into like the different fighting styles and like unique methods that would make like kickboxing like so unique. So I definitely feel like our author has done a really good job with all the different research and the facts into crafting this very believable type of story. And I will say that the mystery aspect of this is a little bit of a slow build. Normally I prefer like really fast-paced mysteries or more mysteries with that like thriller leaning aspect to them. The slow burn to me in this I think is done really well because it does take a while to kind of like piece together all the financial facts and like get a bigger picture of like where all of this like $20 million has gone. And I think that makes it more realistic, honestly. So I'm having such a good time with this. I do not want to put it down. I actually got up early today, which is partially why I'm still in morning mode looking. And I wanted to continue reading this, which is a really good sign. I don't know if she has any other books. I'll have to like check out her backlog after I finish and get like my final like rating and opinions formulated for this if I end up wanting to pick up more of her books. But so far I'm enjoying the writing, I'm enjoying the plot and the setting, and I'm enjoying the character dynamics apart from the romance like subplot, side plot. So I'm going to keep reading and I will give you guys an update once I am all done with Strike Me Down. Well, I ended up finishing Strike Me Down, and I actually am so surprised with how much I enjoyed this. And that's the great thing about the library, is that you can go in and pick up any book that you want based on the cover, the description, like what pulls you in, and after reading it, you can really hone in more on your reading taste or just find like a hidden gem. This to me was a book that I typically would not pick up, and even though I read primarily like mysteries and thrillers, this one has a lot of sports writing that's incorporated into the story, especially with like the kickboxing events and some of the fighting scenes that are in here. There's a lot of terminology regarding kickboxing in this book, and normally I don't even pick up books that have like a sports like reference to them. It's just not It's not my preference, and that's okay, but I didn't really like get put off by it in this book. In this book, I feel like it was done really well because kickboxing, a lot of the like fighters also have very like feisty personalities, so it added like another layer of suspicion to some of our main characters. One of the main characters especially is the owner of the kickboxing company called Strike, and she has a very like feisty woman leadership type of a personality, and she's also very like harsh and easily like angered. I think her personality really suits her as a kickboxer because you can really see that played out in some of the other scenes where she's like training people or like fighting them, and then it's adding to the overall like fraud case of just like adding another layer of complexity to the case. Yeah, I also really enjoyed the investigation piece to this of uncovering the prize money that is seemingly going missing. I thought that was done really well. The author Mindy did a really great job of doing research into what the fraud investigation process is like. I come from a corporate environment in my day job, and so her going through to like describe these types of investigations and like the things that they were uncovering is like honestly very realistic. So I think she did a great job with that. The one critique that I have for this book is the overall like romance subplot. There is two of our main characters end up having like an affair together, which you find out like super early on in the book, so it's like not a spoiler really. And for me, like, I don't know, it just didn't really seem like it added too much to the overall mystery. I mean, it probably added a little bit of like drama between the characters, but was it needed? Probably not. It wasn't heightened to like another level of seriousness either. So like usually like if there's an affair or something, it's like more integral into the plot, and in this regard it was more of a subplot point, and I thought it would take a more central theme in the story, if that makes sense. It is a slow build mystery, but we get pieces of clues and the case unraveling like as we go through chapter by chapter, and so for that I didn't really mind the slow build because it's slowly being revealed to us in like real time as these analysts and individuals are like uncovering like the fraud trail and the transactions for the missing money. So yeah, overall I would give this 4 stars, primarily due to the writing and also the sports element of this story I thought was done really well. So I would highly recommend if you are into like true crime or like crime novels that involve a little bit of like fraud. And that wraps us up for today's reading vlog. Thank you guys so much for sticking around and for watching today's video. If you've read any of these books or have any recommendations for library books that I should check out, please leave a comment down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!